Hello and welcome to Automation. Today we are going to build only an engine. And reason for that is I wanted to try myself at making a kind of a guide. What I mean by that is I want to show you how am I building my engines and what am I looking at when I'm tuning them. So yeah, let's get to it. Well, obviously we have to start with picking engine block. And well, we have many options here, like you can see and already know likely. I am going to go with V8 this time, and I am not sure what type of engine I am going to build, what size, but for sure I am going to try to turbo it. Other thing you have to remember is to pick engine familiar right there. You can obviously change it later on, but you will be changing only the variant year. So yeah, the later the build is, the more materials you can pick from, and also you can go for tech pool, which also changes the materials that are available for you. So right now we can pick, well, basically any material, but if I went for 0 here, we won't have many of them, and that's, well, in most years. But let's stay here with 5 all the way. And well, I'm not going to talk much about materials, cause, well, it is obvious how they work. Better material, the less they weigh. And well, if you want to build an engine that's going to be turboed and high RPM, you likely won't be giving it much strokes, so you have to lower it here, obviously. And here we are going to pick and do our overhead cam, because it gives us a lot of space in terms of tuning the RPM for this engine. The other options are for all older engines basically, and they are limited in terms of RPM and few other settings. For the bottom end parts of the engine, we are of course starting with the crank, and we have quite a few options here. As far as I know, these ones, these three and these three, differ in BeamNG drive only in sound. They do not change much. As you can see, the bars here are similar, if not the same. So yeah, let's go with billet steel flat plane. And this here is pretty much straightforward. Usually you will pick lightweight titanium for high RPM builds, and sometimes heavy-duty forged are better for torquey engines. We are going with lightweight titanium, and similar here, forged is better for torque, lightweight forged is better for RPM. Balancing mass basically makes our engine much more reliable, so it can withstand higher stress in terms of RPM and torque. So usually you will have to pick something here, either none and make it go higher, so the balancing mass weighs much more, and or go for harmonic damper and change stuff here. I tend to pick harmonic damper and lower it all the way, almost all the way down, because it gives better results than having no balancing mass at all. Options here are pretty straightforward. We are going to aim at 7000 RPM, and well, the other options are basically used for tuning and making our engine put out much more power than on the stock settings, you could say. Well, for turboed builds, you usually should go for lower compression right away, and do not wait for picking other options here. I usually start my tuning from lowering it either to 8 to 1 or 7 to 1. Let's go with 7 to 1 here, and let's move on to turbo. Well, we won't be able to see any graphs here yet, but we are going for twin turbo, and let's go with boost control. Well, boost control basically gives us much more space in terms of giving this engine amount of boost we give it, and also in terms of size for inducer and exducer. Injection, well, the old type is obviously a carburetor. It will output, the engine will output less power when you use it. You can use it for some builds. It changes a lot in BeamNG export. we are going here with injection, which is newer and it works much better. You can tune hell out of the engine if you go with direct injection per cylinder. Intake manifold. This one is quite interesting, but I will come back to it when we have the graph. I will tell you what I mean by it. And right now let's stay with our race intake. Fuel, well, I am sure you're filled with it. But in short, some of these options here are quite overpowered. Well, if you pick nitromethane, you basically can make any engine a godly engine, basically. So yeah, it is like a cheat mode here. Well, usually you will go either with unleaded or leaded fuel. If you want to build a beast with, I don't know, 4000 horsepower and export it into BeamNG, you can use this type of fuel easily. For more realistic, you are going usually, as I said, with leaded or unleaded, and also picking appropriate fuel system to it. Well, if we are going with turbo, we are going to get less options here in terms of headers. Let me show you. Well, like you can see, we can pick much more header types. Usually in stock cars, in production cars, you have a kind of a header that is named here like cast low or cast mid. Tubular, well, you could find them only in either tuned cars or some kind of high-end sports cars, luxury ones. Yeah, but let's get back to the turbo headers. Basically same story here as with normal headers. So yeah, I'm not going to talk much about it. For right now we have only single exhaust, where we have set only one turbo. That is why if you go with dual turbo, you can go with dual exhaust. So yeah, let's go with that, and nothing here. Well, basically catalytic converter and mufflers give us nothing in BeamNG drive, where mufflers affect the engine sound, the sound of the exhaust, and it is well, much quieter if you set it to let's say straight through, or if you want to mute it even more, you go with baffled or reverse flow. Well, let's get back to turbo. Well, these are the stock settings basically. Usually you will have to lower the size of the turbo exducer and inducer, because well, as you have seen earlier, these ones were massive and the turbo lag would be massive too. So yeah, let's go, let's make them smaller. I am usually looking for a sweet spot in terms of an RPM and power, so there's not much turbo lag. I would usually aim at somewhere around 2,500 RPM to our turbo kick in to be the base point, and tune it from there. Well, I am almost always starting with turbo tuning and then changing it around in terms of other parts like fuel system or compression rate. Well, there is a lot of trial and error involved here, but usually when you want a lot of boost, you are going with massive turbo, so yeah, there will be a turbo lag. If you don't want the turbo lag, you are going with smaller boost, obviously. Also, too small exhaust can break your engine here, so yeah. Some of my builds had like a 5-inch exhaust just cause I made the engine output like or rather the turbo output like a 1.5 bar into the engine, so yeah. And usually I am finishing my tuning with changing the other settings, so like the compression, we can likely squeeze some more power out of it by making it higher. Also the same thing with cam profile, but as you can see, our pistons died due to extensive torque. Valve float is usually very easy to fix. You are just making the springs and lifters stiffer. Oh, also you can start tuning your turbo from a higher compression and you will likely succeed, but from my experience the best results are when you are starting from like 7 to 1 or 8 to 1. Somewhere around there. Okay, earlier I said the intake manifold changes a lot for many engines. Well, it does, but not when you are expecting the best power output, but when you are going for like semi-realistic engines. You can basically flatten the curve here, where right now we won't see it well because our torque goes all the way down. But as you can see, our horsepower curve is much more flat, less steep than on the race intake manifold. It can help you in tuning some builds that, well, it will make them more predictable. Same with manifold size. You can try restricting engine in many different ways to achieve the well, what you want to achieve really. You can do anything you want as long as you have some kind of idea and purpose there. For example, if you tried to do engine that outputs like 100 horsepower all the way from low RPM to max RPM, you could use it. You could do the same if you wanted to make a lot of power on the bottom part and do zero power on the top end. But you know, it is all up to your imagination and what you want to try in, for example, BeamNG Drive, because there is not really much use for it in automation yet. Maybe in campaign in some ways when you are aiming at a certain part of the market, but as I just said, it is all up to your imagination really, what you want to achieve. And obviously you can use the quality sliders as well to make the engine even better or even worse if you want that. So yeah, I think that's all I wanted to talk about here. I hope I gave you some insight into what I'm making and how am I making it. Maybe some of you will find it useful, maybe it will help you in building better creations or understand how the builder works, cause it is pretty complex. Well, if you liked it, I might do another video like that, or a few more like that, maybe go more in depth on the options here and talk more about them, but I don't know, I am not sure personally. I wanted to do another part of this video that would include only the designer. But that would be for later, cause next video is going to be a normal creation. So yeah, stay tuned and see you in the next one.